And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at another Smash Up expansion. Smash Up's a game I like a lot, where you take two decks of cards and put them together. Technically, this can be played by itself as a two-player game of sorts, but it's an expansion. It adds 4 more factions from the 70s. We got your vigilantes, we got your truckers, disco dancers, and kung fu fighters. And this is when the person who made this was putting these cards together, the designer, they had to have been listening to a lot of songs, because this is a very musically thematic, you're thinking of trucking songs and disco songs and things like that. I'm thinking that way anyway. Anyway, let's take a look at how these factions work. Okay, I'm going to show you the factions in order here, from my least favorite to my favorite, although I don't dislike any of the factions. First, we have the truckers. Now, the truckers are all going to be about actions and on bases. So, for example, here, this good buddy here, if you have an action on this base, draw a card. Or here, the skinny mini, if there's an action on this base, move him somewhere else. This guy gets +1 for each of your actions on the base. Here you can take control of any action on this base, which is actually pretty good. You can, if you're playing against someone who has good actions on bases, I want to say the princesses do. And here, choose an action, transfer it to another base, or take control of it, or take control of it. Choose an action in the discard pile and play it on a base. And you're like, wow, that's great. Where are these actions on bases? Well, they're in here too. Under Convoy and Rally, here you play on a base, you're +1 for each action on the base, including this one, which is very useful. Before a base scores, you can pick someone to get +2 for each action on the base. So if you put both of these on the same base, this one's giving you +2. Here you're giving one of your minions a +4. These can really add up. Here your minions can't be destroyed or moved. Here you can transfer this to another base to move up to 3 minions from there to here. Transfer a minion from one base to another. This transfers someone and give them +3. So you can see that the thing about truckers is they can kind of stack up. You can really set it up to have a really powerful presence at a particular base. Well, then we have the vigilantes. Now, the one thing I noticed about them is all of their people. So we have Foxy Green and Death Wisher. All the different minions from the vigilantes are different, and all of them are a power of 4. And the vigilantes special thing is essentially like revenge, or kind of a reaction type thing. If your opponent does something, you can do something back. Like here, after someone else plays a card that directly affects a minion, she's +1 power. When someone destroys a minion that they don't control, you can destroy one of theirs. Obviously, also all the people in here are very closely based on different movies. Dusty Henry and Jackie Bill. Here, search your deck for an action that goes in your hand, Mr. Stoneford. And Shift here, place 2 minions on top of your deck. And Brojack. Again, you'll notice that, it seems like the theming of this is after someone else does something. Shrug it off. Cancel the abilities of this base until your next turn. The Revenge. Play after a base scores where you didn't win and something happens. Here, if you have a minion, reduce the printed breakthrough of this base to 0 until the end of the turn. I really like this one. In fact, I like this set a lot because I like the fact that everyone in it has 4 power. That's pretty cool in of itself. And it's also, you're going to hear all kinds of quotes, make my day. Almost all the cards here that are printed are going to be said as you say them. Draw a card for each minion you control, power 4 or more. That's really useful, especially if you have several of these 4-power minions, or you combine them with a set that has minions that are greater power. A lot of the new factions tend to have lots of weenies, lots of smaller ones. It's nice to have someone who's more powerful. Feeling Lucky, Scared Stiff, Straight, a whole lot meaner, or this just gives someone +3, or choose a minion and shuffle it into their owner's deck. So that's the Vigilantes. Then we have the Disco Dancers. Now, there's a lot of rollers and a lot of disco loos in the deck here. Here he lets you play an extra action when you put him out. And after she's directly affected by an action, place a +1 counter on it if no such counters were there when the action was played. But what really makes these are the two other minions, the Diva and the Dancing King. Only 16, I think. Anyhow, here they both have the same thing. If an action affects one of your other minions, this minion's affected the same way. So this one, it says when it affects one of your minions here, you can choose another one. He's a little bit better than she is. But it basically, you're letting people copy each other. The We Are Family card also does the same thing. And then you have all kinds of actions here. Just play an extra minion. Here you can put a +1 counter on one of their minions. And for each minion affected by this, draw a card. Well, if you're doing that multiple times, you're getting multiple power things, and you're going to be able to add cards to the different people. You also notice that all the names of these cards are names of songs. Get Down Tonight, I Will Survive, Staying Alive, which I like this one too. Pick a minion and play, and bring a copy of that from the discard pile. Or after a base scores, one of the minions goes back to your hand instead of the discard pile. Move a minion, play 2 extra actions. And this one I found very intriguing. Each player can destroy a minion they control. For each minion actually destroyed, you get 1 victory point. Well, that could be interesting if you tie the disco dancers with other minions that you don't mind them destroying, or you can do it and then bring them right back. And then we have the Kung Fu Fighters. So there's a couple Kung Fu Fighters. We have Cricket, who lets you move a power counter from one minion to another. This guy, if he has no power counters, you put one on him. So you can put one on him and then use the Cricket to move it to somebody else. Or Lady Whirlwind, if this minion has no +1 power counters, you can destroy a minion to put a +1 on it and then move it off again. It's really a fun thing. This is why this is my favorite faction of this set. And then the Dragon Warrior cannot be destroyed, period. And you can transfer any number of +1 power counters from one minion to another. So this is a lot of fun, especially if you mix them with another set that has the power counters on them. Like I like mixing these guys with the vampires. Then there's a lot of cool action cards. There's Oh Ho Ho Ho. Everyone was Kung Fu fighting. Their kicks were fast as lightning. Here you can pick someone to get +2 power, and it goes back to their hands. It was a little bit frightening, which I do like the artwork on this one here, to destroy someone, to put 2 +1 counters on one of your minions. They had expert timing. Take any number of power counters from one card to another, and you can play this right before base scores, which is really handy. There was an ancient Chinese art. Everyone knew their part. And then finally, let's get it on. Choose one of your minions. Destroy one or more minions at the same base with a total power less than or equal to that minion. You have a powerful minion, you can kill a whole bunch of weenies. This is like an anti-robot deck, and I like that. So of course we have the artwork on these cards. I mean, everything is pretty much the same as the other sets in here. And then there's also a pile of new bases that are here, and these bases are going to have basically things that work with something else, that work kind of like the same way that their characters work. So the Ancient Dojo here lets you put out power counters on them. My favorite of the new locations, the tournament site. When it scores, you get +1 victory point for each person with no power there. So this only gives it to first person. So if I go there, you might say, forget it, you can just have it. I'm like, yeah, but there's a 4-player game. I'm going to get 5 points from this. And then so now I got to go there and fight, but there's only one winner. Or the hideout here. So there's a lot of cool different things here. And then the game also comes with more tokens. If you at this point, I got a ton of these tokens from all the different expansions. So if you want the disco, I wonder why they picked disco tokens, but it is what it is. So at this point in time, every time I see a new expansion, I think, man, how are they going to make these feel different? I get the theming, right? It's easy to say, okay, here's 4 themes. These themes work fine, especially for people from the 70s. My daughter was like, these seem like really dumb factions. I was like, well, yeah, well, that is because you don't know anything about the 70s. Back off. You know, and the nostalgia certainly has part of it. You know, I look at that and say, well, I like the Kung Fu Fighters because as soon as I saw the faction, I started humming Everybody Was Kung Fu Fighting in my head, and then I was thrilled to see that the words were on the cards. But none of that means anything if these factions are just kind of retreads of other ones. They're not. I think they're going to run out of easy ways to manipulate the system, but so far, like the transferring the power counters around, that's a really cool concept. And again, it's why they're my favorite so far. The combo, like I said, I like with them is to have the Kung Fu vampires, which also works kind of well thematically too. Or having the vigilante dinosaurs. That's right. Do you feel lucky? And that didn't make any sense. But so This is a good faction. This is a good set. Is it one of my favorite of the expansions? No, I put it solidly in the middle. It's good. It's not as exciting for me as maybe double science fiction double feature or the cease and desist, but I do think there's solid ones. I don't think that they're stretching and making the rules too complex. I don't think at the same time that these are, other than the Kung Fu Fighters and maybe the Vigilantes, I don't know that the other ones are like that distinguishable, like, oh yeah. You know, because a lot of times when you hear me talk about these, I'll say something like, oh, this will go good with the robots, because when you play with the robots, you know how they work. Well, most people do. Or maybe the zombies or a few of the other factions are very distinct. These, I think we're starting to get slightly less distinct, although they still each have their own characteristics. So a good solid expansion for Smash Up, that's 70's expansion. Dice Tower Judgment, approved!
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door.